There are many patterns that can be seen when you look at the changes for irregular verbs in German between the infinitive, the Präteritum or simple past tense, and the Partizip zwei, which is used to form the perfect tense. In this video, I'll show you the most common patterns which will help you to learn the past tense forms of German irregular verbs. Verbs that have EI in their stems in the present tense often switch those two letters to make it IE in the past tenses. For example, bleiben, blieb, geblieben. Entscheiden, entschied, entschieden. Leihen, lieh, geliehen. Scheinen, schien, geschienen. Schreien, schrie, geschrien. Schreiben, schrieb, geschrieben. Steigen, stieg, gestiegen. Be careful with this pattern, however, as there are plenty of regular verbs that have EI in the middle of them, and there are also a few irregular exceptions to the rules. For example, heißen, hieß, geheißen. Reiten, ritt, geritten. Schneiden, schnitt, geschnitten. Verbs that have IE in their infinitive tend to have O's in their past tenses. For example, biegen, bog, gebogen. Bieten, bot, geboten. Fliegen, flog, geflogen. Schießen, schoss, geschossen. Schließen, schloss, geschlossen. Verlieren, verlor, verloren. Ziehen, zog, gezogen. Of course, there are exceptions to that pattern as well, most notably liegen, lag, gelegen. If the verb stem has an I in it, you'll find two distinct patterns for the past tenses. Verbs that change to an A in the simple past and O in the perfect tense, or verbs that change to an A in the simple past but U in the perfect tense. For example, beginnen, begann, begonnen. Gewinnen, gewann, gewonnen. Schwimmen, schwamm, geschwommen. Spinnen, spann, gesponnen. Sprechen, sprach, gesprochen. Sterben, starb, gestorben. Treffen, traf, getroffen. Werfen, warf, geworfen. Wait, those last four don't have I in the infinitive. What's going on? How is that even the same pattern? Well, these verbs are all irregular in the present tense too. They have a stem change from E to I. Sprechen becomes spricht. Sterben becomes stirbt. Treffen, trifft. And werfen, wirft. So while they don't have I in the infinitive, they do still follow the IAO rule. In fact, there are several more just like that. For example, brechen, brach, gebrochen. Helfen, half, geholfen. Nehmen, nahm, genommen. Verbs that change from an I to an A and then a U include finden, fand, gefunden. Klingen, klang, geklungen. Singen, sang, gesungen. Trinken, trank, getrunken. There is another common pattern for verbs that have I in the stem. This changes from I to A in the simple past, just like the other ones did, but E in the perfect tense. This often happens with verbs that have a stem change in the present tense. Unlike our last pattern, however, this one is not limited to just verbs that change from an E to an I, but also from E to IE. This also is the reason that I put liegen on this list, as it changes from IE to A and then E. Here are a few examples of this category. Bitten, bat, gebeten. Essen, aß, gegessen. Geben, gab, gegeben. Lesen, las, gelesen. Sehen, sah, gesehen. Treten, trat, getreten. Sitzen, saß, gesessen. Liegen, lag, gelegen. Vergessen, vergaß, vergessen. Quick side note here, the verb sein can sort of be added to this category, as it does change from an I in the present tense to an A in the Präteritum and an E in the perfect. But because the stem changes a bit more in the Präteritum than other verbs do, I often put this on a list of its own. Sein, war, gewesen. Verbs that have an A in the stem follow several patterns. First up is the change from an A to a U in the simple past and back to an A in the perfect. Here are a few examples of that. Fahren, fuhr, gefahren. Laden, lud, geladen. schlagen, schlug, geschlagen, tragen, trug, getragen, waschen, wusch, gewaschen. This group actually belongs to a larger group of verbs whose stems simply change in the Präteritum but then go back to the same vowel in the Perfekt. While they aren't always the same vowels in each verb in this category, there is an overarching connection to be seen. Laufen, lief, gelaufen. Heißen, hieß, geheißen. Rufen, rief, gerufen. Fangen, fing, gefangen. Hängen, hing, gehangen. Quick side note here, fangen and hangen are technically the same, as fangen has a stem change in the present tense, making it fängt with an umlaut. These patterns are great for helping you learn past tense of irregular verbs in German, but there are a few verbs that really just don't fit into any particular mold. For those, you'll simply have to remember them. Here are a few examples of those. Gehen, ging, gegangen. Kommen, kam, gekommen. Stehen, stand, gestanden. Tun, tat, getan. Werden, wurde, geworden. Now that you know these patterns, you are well on your way to mastering the past tenses of German verbs. If you want to learn more about the perfect tense and how it works, click the link over here. If you want to learn more about the Präteritum tense, click over here. Das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!